They'll be calling you right up. Kevin Blanch, I got a really special interview here with probably the only known AML OS survivor who actually had the surgery, probably in the world, and he saved my life. That's my dad at San Onofre. That's, you see the dates, those are San Onofre, and you know the San Onofre dynamic, which Bryan Morris is his name. He grew up, and without him I'd be dead. We're probably the only two survivors of AML OS de novo leukemia without bone marrow transplants that anyone knows of. He's the doctors say, and I think it's true, he's the only one they know of that actually had the surgery that's alive. And so I'm just going to have him tell his story. It's Kevin Blanch. We're at Trolley Square in Salt Lake City, 100 degrees today, you know, in the desert. So, all right, Bryan, let me sit down here. Let's see if we get out of the shade so we don't get in the background so we get a good picture of you. Okay, so first I just want to ask you how you met me, Kevin Blanch. Here, you got, pull up here in the shade so we can see you better. There we go. There, that's great.
Well, I met you as a patient at the L.D.S. East 8, which was our, saved both of our lives. But I met you at the recommendation or the invitation of a nurse there, or more of a PA, physician's assistant there, who was treating you. You were in bad shape, both physically and emotionally, and he had told you, I don't know if you, how you found out about my case, but asked me if I would come and talk with you and encourage you, and I said absolutely. And that's, I think I came up the very next day.
Yeah, Rob, who was a military doctor, and he was one of the PAs that work in there. Fantastic doctor, by the way. I was at the end of my rope. I was in there, and I really couldn't do it anymore. And like I said, the disease we have is called AML OS de novo, which is leukemia that presents at tumors, which is pretty well a death sentence, which gets misdiagnosed. So while I'm in there, different nurses say, hey, Kevin, don't give up. There was another guy who was in here just not very long ago who was in worse shape than you, and this is an unsurvivable disease, but he didn't die. He ice bathed the whole works. His name's Bryan Morris. And so Rob, when I just broke down crying one day in there, and Rob says, listen, there's a guy, and he says, can I call him and have him come see you? Yeah. And I want people to know this, that the day that Bryan came and saw me, I was at the end of my rope, it was January 2012, and we both have San Onofre ties, both he and I, and we both come from old school bloodlines in Utah. His family, very first people here, my family, very first here. We got it at the same age in the same place. And so he came in the day that's the very day that San Onofre had their meltdown and their major nuclear accident, was that day that Bryan came in and saw me. I was at the end of my rope. So tell your story, Bryan, if you would, about this disease in your body.
Well, I mean, I didn't know I had it, number one. One day I'm perfectly fine, working, and next day I'm doubled over. And I'm thinking it's a roast beef sandwich that I ate, you know, the day before. And but, you know, it quickly became apparent that wasn't a roast beef sandwich. You know, and so when I went to the hospital, they did tests, and there was a slight shadow that appeared, you know, through some of the initial tests, that they wanted to go further. So, you know, for a week or so, they had me on, you know, draining my stomach and fluids and all that other stuff, and decided, and they found this tumor on my small intestine. For all apparent reasons unknown to me, they basically made the determination that it was a benign tumor, and the chances of it being cancer were, I don't even know how they come up with these statistics and stuff, 5–10%. So they go in and cut me open, take about 2 feet of my small intestine, take out this tumor, leave just about a tiny bit of it because it was on a blood vessel. Sew me back up and say, you know, I think everything will be fine. Well, a couple days of recovery, and they come in and say things aren't fine. We found some sort of strange cancer cells. And basically, the head of the oncology department at Intermountain Healthcare IMC here in Salt Lake City happened to be a college friend of mine, and he sent it to a couple different pathology labs because it just didn't look right, and they'd misdiagnosed it at first, and so they diagnosed it as granulocytic sarcoma is the name I always use, and it was basically within a week after they sewed me up. They had me up at L.D.S. Hospital, East 8 they call it. It's a bone marrow transplant clinic.
Best place in the world, by the way.
Best place in the world. Saved my life, saved Kevin's life, and many others, I'm sure. But this is a rare form of cancer, leukemia, that it's not in the blood. It manifests itself in a tumor. And, you know, for all intents and purposes, make a long story short, I was in there for 3 months straight, and they didn't even let me out, because the reason they didn't let me out is because I would have died. And they doused me with so much chemo that obviously everyone knows what chemo does to you, but it brings your immune system down to nothing. So really, it wasn't the cancer that was going to kill me, it was the infections that you get because you have no immune system. So I've told Kevin this, and I've told many, many other people with cancer and who don't have cancer, that I think the reason, at least 70–80% of the reason that I survived is attitude, because it never even crossed my mind, not one time that I can remember, that I was going to die. It was just another hurdle, and you really have to have a kick-ass attitude. And everything I'm telling you right now is what I told Kevin the day I went and saw him. And he says,
tell him how bad I was that day.
It was bad. I mean, it was bad. And to be honest with you, I was looking in the mirror. I knew exactly what he was going through and how he felt, and I wanted to give him some hope. And that's really all cancer patients need, I think, is, if anything, hope. I think, after 3 months, I finally got my levels and stuff up to a place where I could technically not leave the hospital, but they let me leave the hospital. And I think that saved my life too, in knowing that I could be with my family and have somewhere to grow and go.
How about your ice baths?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was bad. It was, when I got sick, it was 105-degree temperatures. They had to put me in ice baths, or I just would have fried, my brain would have fried. And it's a bad, ugly, awful treatment, but you know what? Without it, I wouldn't be here. So it's kind of a catch-22. It saved me, but the one thing that I chose to do that saved my life was I chose not to have a bone marrow transplant.
Now this is important, because I think even Finbo, that genius who accepted me, and Brian's case is the only reason I'm alive. The only reason they accepted me is because I really think even he thought, everybody I think thought, and you just says, I'm not going to do it, and you went home. And I know, because they've told me, everybody thought you were going to die, and you didn't die.
Well, the interesting thing that everybody should really know is there are standard protocols that doctors live by, and it's almost like you have to stop at a stop sign. You have to yield at the yield sign. I mean, they just go through these rules, and sometimes rules are meant to be broken, because the protocol that they had at the time, and probably still do, many people go through bone marrow transplants, and it's not really all that good for some people. And it would have killed me. I would have just flat out died. And I actually credit my wife, Ann, for, you're brain dead after all of this. You really can't even think. And I've told Kevin this before. I couldn't even remember my Social Security number. And my wife, in a final consultation with Finn Peterson, just said, hey, cut all the crap, cut all the bullshit. If he was your son, would you recommend a bone marrow transplant? And he just looked at us and said, no, it'll kill you. And so it was kind of like, okay, done. But if he would have followed the protocol, I'd be dead. So it's interesting and really important to take control of your own life. your own decisions, and have people around you that you have all the facts to make decisions on. I thank God every day that I'm alive.
Well, you're a pioneer, like you're the Dinwiddie crowd that pioneers our families. Abe Huntsaker V, and they came together, the first ones here, pioneers. And this is Pioneer Day in a couple of days, and he really truly is the pioneer, and I'm here to tell you. And this is coming, Thomas Blanch, Marcy Blanch, the famous doctors are my family and my uncles. And so people started leaking to me in the hospital and saying, no, Kevin, the nurses, there's another guy. There's a guy, they said him to die, didn't die. Listen to that, that's the thunder roaring. They're listening to us, our parents, our fathers.
Yeah, that's right.
Our fathers and our parents.
The Scots and Welsh.
You're a Scot. I love it. I'm a big believer in that, and I stayed very spiritual, and I know you did, but they're like, this guy, he was way worse than you. Joey Ash was born the same day as me, one of our wonderful doctors.
Yeah.
She come in and says, oh no, we almost killed Bryan. We chemoed his heart, so we tweaked it a little, and I diagnosed myself because, and same with Bryan, but I think the common denominator, we're the same age, we have the same past. I never felt like I was going to die, and he, it wasn't for him, I would be dead. I mean, it's unarguable. Fimbo says the only reason we even took you, the Danish philosophy of medicine over there is because of his path. He didn't die. Now there's 3 of us now, or 2 more. There's been 2 more people because of his pioneering work that didn't die that's had the same treatment. Now Carla, of course, was in there with me and she passed, and Marshall. But, we're all about the same age.
She also had a bone marrow.
Yeah, but she was, it appeared in her breast and she was dying. Yeah, she did have a bone marrow transplant. She had 2 of them.
I just, I'm not, I think it might work for some people, but it's a brutal reboot of your body.
And it does work for some people,
and it does for some people.
But it's a low number, and in our types, AML OS, and I want people to know this because, I was a professor at the time working on my PhD in the stats. I'm an environmental economist, anti-nuclear. So I knew all this. I diagnosed myself. I was misdiagnosed, and, the bone marrow biopsy, we just had the conversation about the bone marrow biopsies. How great are those?
Yeah, a lot of fun.
And so, but the statistical probability was so against it. The survival rate's 0.06, but you can throw that bullshit out the freaking window. Like we talked about that. These doctors that put that out, it's an individual thing. And so, cancer can form in tumors. And, nuclear fallout and San Onofre dynamic, it comes into play, all of it. But, these pioneering cases, he's the only person on earth, and this is coming from many multiple doctors they know of, who actually had the surgery. Now, I didn't have the surgery. I refused the surgery. And there's been a few survived, but very few. But the only guy that ever had the surgery and survived, they know on earth, is this guy right here. And without him, I'd be dead. There's absolutely no doubt. They wouldn't even try it with me. And so, I can't say how much I love you. And
I love you too. And the one thing I would want to say too is that I think it's really important that this kind of information get out. Unfortunately, with HIPAA laws and the sharing of this information, it isn't always all that known or published, or it really should be, because people should be able to talk to other people who have experienced this. Because if I actually had somebody come in and talk to me, not with what I had, but had 3 different cancers, and he was a young man, and he said, I've kicked all 3 of their asses, you can do it. And that's what I did for Kevin.
Yes.
And it helps.
And if Rob wouldn't have come in, he saw me broke down that day, and he says, Kevin, I'm not even supposed to probably do this, but because I went against protocol inside there. You know how I fought.
There's nothing worse than a grown man crying.
And I don't cry. You've seen me. This whole dynamic, I only broke down twice in this whole thing. And, and everybody knows I've been very strong. But, that treatment's brutal. We live on the bag. He was just telling me about on the Ensure and the Boost, because we can't eat. The tumor appeared on me in the same place. It's on the bowel, and so my bowel was obstructed. So we live on the bag, but you can only live on that bag. So he would freeze his Ensure and eat it like ice cream. Whitney would stand over me and make me drink mine, and I'd puke it back up. I lived on Boost Plus, 4 of them a day.
Luckily, I had 50 pounds to lose.
Yeah.
Because I was just a rail when I got out of there. So,
I weighed 130 when well, less than that. I got down to 119.
I think I was 220 when I went in there, and I got down to, 170, 175.
Well, your story's about hope, and we were talking yesterday. He grew up, you know, vacationing like so many of us Utahns do, going back and forth, swimming at Sinanofri, you know, and so did I. You know, my fathers and our fathers, both our fathers died young, you know. Incredible pioneer story here of Utah and hope, and, you know, us downwinders. And I think your father, I think your grandparents, I think everybody was very proud of you for gutting it up.
Yeah, thank you.
And fighting, because a lot of people don't, and you gutted it up and you fought, you know, and because we love life.
Yeah. Well, and I had 2 young boys too that I did not want to leave.
There you have it. You know, and my 2 little grandsons, I'm like, oh no, you know, these fucking pricks ain't taking me.
Yeah.
They ain't taking me.
Well, and that's the attitude you almost have to have. I mean, you have to have a kick-ass attitude, because you have to tell it every day that you are not going to kill me. I am going to kick your ass, and I'm talking about cancer. And so you have to have that, and, you know, call me stubborn, call me whatever, but that's the attitude you have to have. And if any cancer patient or anybody knows a cancer patient, you tell them that's the attitude they have to have, and you keep reinforcing that.
Yeah, fuck cancer.
Yeah,
fuck cancer.
yeah.
And fuck the assholes that gave it to us. And, you know, we fight. And we don't lay down and we don't go to sleep. We fight. And so, you know, like I said, he's the only person on earth that just shows you, throw the odds out, throw whatever. You know, and it's not just about believing God's will, whatever. You fight. And, you know, and like I said, if it wasn't for his story, I would not be here. They wouldn't even have accepted me. And Finbo's confirmed that. He says, we wouldn't have took you, Kevin. But, you know, Bryan, we guinea pigged him, sent him home, everybody thought, and he didn't die. So we're going to do the same thing. And they overrode, and I have tattoos up me from, you know, the light radiation, but he wouldn't even PET scan me anymore. Yep. We fly blind on it, and we're up against so much.
Lab rats.
Exactly, just like my dad was at San Onofre, you know. So I appreciate you.
We survived to tell other people.
Yes, we survived for a reason.
I love you, man.
I love you too, Bryan. You mean everything to me. Stand tuned. Bryan Morris, AML OS, leukemia survivor who had the surgery. You know, wow, what a story. Against all odds. Stand tuned.